Long before European ships sailed along the coasts of Africa, a powerful civilization was rising deep within the heart of West Africa. It was an empire built not on oceans or massive stone walls, but on trade, gold, and the control of vast lands stretching across the savannas. This was the Mali Empire, one of the richest and most influential empires in medieval history. Its story begins after the decline of another great West African power, the Ghana Empire. For centuries, the Ghana Empire had controlled the important gold and salt trade routes across the Sahara Desert. Caravans of camels carried salt from the north and gold from the south, linking West Africa to merchants in North Africa and the Mediterranean world. But by the early 1200s, the Ghana Empire had weakened. Internal struggles, external invasions, and shifting trade routes slowly eroded its power. As Ghana declined, smaller kingdoms began competing to fill the vacuum. One of these kingdoms was Mali. At first, Mali was a small and relatively unknown state located along the upper reaches of the Niger River. The river provided fertile land for farming and served as a natural highway for trade and communication. But Mali's destiny would change because of one remarkable leader, Sundiata Keita. According to oral traditions passed down by West African griots, Sundiata's early life was filled with hardship. As a child, he was unable to walk and was often mocked by others. Many believed he would never become a leader. Yet legends say that Sundiata eventually overcame his disability and grew into a powerful and determined warrior. During this time, the region was dominated by a rival ruler named Soumoro Kante, the king of the powerful Soso kingdom. Soumoro was feared across West Africa for his harsh rule and powerful army. Many smaller kingdoms suffered under his dominance. But Sundiata began gathering allies who were tired of Soso rule. Slowly, he united different clans and kingdoms under a single cause. This growing alliance eventually confronted Soumoro in a decisive conflict known as the Battle of Kirina around 1235. The battle became one of the most important turning points in West African history. Sundiata's coalition defeated Soumoro's forces, breaking the power of the Soso kingdom and establishing Mali as the dominant force in the region. Following his victory, Sundiata was crowned the first emperor of the Mali Empire. Under his leadership, the empire began expanding rapidly. Sundiata reorganized the government, strengthened the military, and secured control over the valuable trade routes that crossed West Africa. Gold mines in the region came under Mali's authority, giving the empire access to enormous wealth. At the same time, Sundiata promoted stability within the lands he ruled. He established laws and agreements among different clans and communities, helping maintain peace within the growing empire. Trade flourished under this new stability. Merchants traveled across the Sahara in long camel caravans carrying gold, salt, ivory, and other valuable goods. These trade networks connected Mali to cities in North Africa and beyond. The empire's influence soon spread across a vast territory, stretching over areas that today include parts of modern Mali, Senegal, Guinea, and Niger. The Niger River continued to serve as the empire's economic lifeline. Along its banks, towns and trading centers began to grow. Among these cities, one would eventually become legendary, Timbuktu. Although it began as a modest trading settlement, Timbuktu would later develop into one of the most famous cities in the medieval world, known for its scholars, markets, and cultural influence. But during the early years of the empire, Mali was still laying the foundations of its power. Sundiata Keita ruled wisely, strengthening the institutions that would allow the empire to thrive long after his reign. By the time of his death, the Mali Empire had already become one of the largest and most powerful states in West Africa. Yet the empire's greatest moment of glory was still to come. In the generations after Sundiata, new rulers would inherit this powerful state. Among them would rise a king whose wealth and influence would become legendary across continents. His name was Mansa Musa. And under his rule, the Mali Empire would reach heights of prosperity and fame that astonished the entire world. By the early 14th century, the Mali Empire had already become one of the most powerful states in West Africa. Built on the foundations laid by Sundiata Keita, the empire controlled vast territories, rich farmland, and, most importantly, the gold trade that connected West Africa to the wider world. But the empire's true golden age would arrive under one extraordinary ruler. His name was Mansa Musa. When Mansa Musa became emperor around 1312, Mali already possessed enormous wealth from its gold mines. At the time, West Africa produced a large portion of the world's gold supply. Caravans traveled across the Sahara Desert, carrying this gold northward to merchants in North Africa and the Middle East. As emperor, Mansa Musa controlled much of this trade. Gold flowed through the empire's markets, and Mali quickly became one of the richest and most influential kingdoms in the medieval world. But Mansa Musa was not interested in keeping Mali hidden from the rest of the world. Instead, he would make sure the entire world heard of its wealth. In 1324, Mansa Musa embarked on a journey that would become one of the most famous royal expeditions in history, a pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. This journey was required of Muslim rulers who could afford it, but Mansa Musa transformed the pilgrimage into an event that astonished everyone who witnessed it. His caravan stretched for miles across the desert. Historical accounts describe thousands of soldiers, attendants, and servants traveling with the emperor. Hundreds of camels carried enormous loads of gold. Some reports claim each camel transported over 100 kilograms of the precious metal. Wherever the caravan passed, people gathered to watch the spectacle. When Mansa Musa arrived in Cairo, the capital of Egypt at the time, his generosity became legendary. He distributed so much gold and gifts and trade that the value of gold in the region reportedly fell for years afterward. Merchants, scholars, and rulers across the Islamic world suddenly became aware of the immense wealth of Mali. Maps created in Europe and the Middle East even began depicting Mansa Musa holding a large golden nugget, symbolizing the empire's incredible riches. But the emperor's journey was not only about wealth. During his pilgrimage, Mansa Musa met scholars, architects, and teachers from across the Islamic world. When he returned to Mali, he invited many of these learned individuals to help develop education and architecture within his empire. This decision helped transform Mali into an important center of knowledge and culture. One city in particular rose to extraordinary prominence, Timbuktu. Originally a modest trading settlement along the Niger River, Timbuktu grew into a thriving center of commerce, learning, and religion. Merchants from across Africa and beyond brought goods to its markets, while scholars traveled there to study. One of the most famous institutions established during this time was the Sankore University, part of a network of learning centers where students studied subjects such as law, mathematics, astronomy, and theology. Libraries filled with handwritten manuscripts became symbols of the city's intellectual life. At a time when many parts of the world had limited access to education, Timbuktu was home to thousands of scholars and students. Knowledge flowed through the city just as trade flowed through its markets. Meanwhile, the Mali Empire continued expanding its influence across West Africa. Its rulers maintained strong control over important trade routes connecting the gold fields of the south with the salt mines of the north. Salt, which was extremely valuable in the hot climate of the Sahara region, was traded in large quantities and often exchanged directly for gold. This trade brought enormous wealth into the imperial treasury. With this wealth, the empire built impressive mosques, strengthened its cities, and maintained a powerful army capable of defending its vast territories. At its height, the Mali Empire stretched across a huge portion of West Africa, covering lands that today include parts of modern Mali, Senegal, Guinea, Niger, and Mauritania. Travelers and historians from distant lands described Mali as one of the most prosperous and well-organized states in the world. Yet history has shown that even the most powerful empires cannot remain at their peak forever. After the reign of Mansa Musa, the empire would eventually face new challenges, internal struggles, shifting trade routes, and rising rivals. Slowly, the power that had once made Mali the wealthiest empire of its time would begin to fade. And in the centuries that followed, the empire that had once dazzled the world with gold and knowledge would enter a long and gradual decline. Despite the extraordinary wealth and influence achieved during the reign of Mansa Musa, the Mali Empire would eventually begin to weaken. Like many great empires in history, its decline did not happen suddenly. Instead, it was the result of several problems that slowly eroded its power over time. After Mansa Musa's death in 1337, the empire passed to his successors. Some of these rulers attempted to maintain the strong administration and stability that had existed during the empire's golden age. However, few possessed the same leadership ability or authority. As time passed, the central government in Mali became weaker. One major problem was the enormous size of the empire itself. At its height, Mali controlled vast territories across West Africa. Governing such a large area required strong leadership and efficient administration. Without powerful rulers at the center, it became increasingly difficult to maintain control over distant provinces. Gradually, local governors and regional leaders began gaining more independence. Some regions that had once been loyal to Mali's rulers started asserting their autonomy. As these territories slipped away from imperial control, the empire's influence and tax revenues began to shrink. Another challenge came from changes in trade. For centuries, the wealth of the Mali Empire had depended heavily on controlling the trade routes that crossed the Sahara Desert. Caravans transported gold from West Africa to markets in North Africa and the Mediterranean world. But over time, these trade routes began shifting. New trading centers emerged, and rival states started competing for control of the valuable gold and salt trade. As these economic networks evolved, Mali's dominance over commerce gradually declined. Meanwhile, internal political struggles created further instability. Conflicts over succession sometimes erupted when new rulers took the throne. Rival factions within the empire competed for influence, weakening the unity that had once made Mali so powerful. As central authority weakened, neighboring states began challenging Mali's control over key regions. Among the rising powers was the Songhai Empire, which had originally been one of Mali's subject territories. Located along the Niger River, Songhai gradually grew stronger and more ambitious. One of the most important moments in Mali's decline came when the city of Timbuktu fell under Songhai control during the 15th century. Timbuktu had been one of the greatest centers of trade and learning in the Mali Empire. Losing this city meant losing a major source of wealth and influence. As Songhai expanded, it took control of more territories that had once belonged to Mali. By the late 1400s, the Songhai Empire had become the dominant power in the region, effectively replacing Mali as the leading state in West Africa. Although the Mali Empire continued to exist in a reduced form for some time, it was no longer the powerful force it had once been. Eventually, the empire fragmented into smaller kingdoms, and its political influence faded. Yet despite its decline, the legacy of the Mali Empire remained profound. The empire had played a crucial role in shaping the economic and cultural history of West Africa. Its control over the gold trade connected African markets with North Africa, the Middle East, and even Europe. This trade helped integrate West Africa into global economic networks that stretched across continents. The empire also contributed significantly to the spread of learning and culture. Cities such as Timbuktu became famous for their scholars, libraries, and centers of education. Thousands of manuscripts produced during this era preserved knowledge about science, religion, law, and literature. These intellectual traditions remain an important part of African history today. The story of the Mali Empire also highlights the achievements of remarkable leaders such as Sundiata Keita, who founded the empire, and Mansa Musa, whose wealth and influence astonished the medieval world. Their leadership helped create one of the richest and most culturally vibrant civilizations of the Middle Ages. Even centuries after its fall, the memory of the Mali Empire continues to inspire historians and scholars. It stands as a powerful reminder that great centers of wealth, knowledge, and culture have existed in many parts of the world, including the heart of Africa. The rise and fall of the Mali Empire is therefore more than just a regional story. It is a chapter in the broader history of human civilization, a story of ambition, trade, leadership, and the enduring impact of a remarkable empire.